On this morning, I would want to read for you a book written by Joseph Tamale Mirundi, and this book, in commemoration of, in remembrance of former president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe. I'm going to read for you this book, and this book has the cover of Robert Mugabe and his wife. This book is called How Leaders Lose Political Power. How Leaders Lose Political Power. We are coming to you live from Joseph Tamale Mirundi on Facebook, and we are coming to you live on Tamale Mirundi Official on YouTube. Today, as we remember the great African man, the guy who was a leader of Zimbabwe, former president who died on the 6th, I'm going to read for you this book. The book title is How Leaders Lose Political Power. When Robert Mugabe lost power, Tamale Mirundi wrote a book about how his downfall was mainly a result of his wife. And this book was authored on the Tuesday, 16th November 2017. It was concluded at 3:30 p.m. at his home in Zana. This book was written 16th November 2017. I come to you in 2019 to read this book for you, How Leaders Lose Political Power, a Woman's Biblical Curse. I'll read straight, starting from the introduction. How Leaders Lose Political Power, a Woman's Biblical Curse. According to the Bible, God created Adam. Adam felt lonely and asked God to give him a companion, and God created a woman named Eve or Kawa from Adam's rib. But instead of keeping Adam happy, the woman later committed a savage crime with a snake, and as a consequence, God gave his verdict. Man will always sweat for his bread, while a woman will suffer labor pains during child delivery. God also brought everlasting enmity between the snake and Adam's descendants. God also condemned it that its head had to be crushed on sight. In my tradition, Walumbe, which is death, Tamale Mirundi writes, was brought to the earth by his sister Nambi. According to this folk story, Chintu and his wife Nambi plotted to migrate to earth from heaven, but this mission was to be kept top secret deep in the night while death was asleep. On their way, Nambi realized that she had forgotten millet, which she used to feed her cock, and at once decided to go back, only to find Walumbe awake and looking for them. This is how a woman, Nambi, brought death Walumbe to earth. The Bible further talks about Samson, the mighty warrior, whose demise came through betrayal by a woman called Delilah. The same Bible also gives a detailed account of how Joseph, from whom I derive my name, was trapped and framed by Potiphar's wife, but survived the gallows after interpreting his boss's dreams. In the same book is a story of John the Baptist. He was a prophet and had performed innumerous miracles that without doubt identified him as a man of God. When King Herod told his daughter to make a wish and vowed to fulfill it, a woman and his wife advised the young girl to ask for Johnny's head on a dish. Which was granted. Russia's strong man, Boris Yeltsin, also lost power after his wife told everyone that he is always under the influence of vodka. I remembered all these childhood stories on Wednesday, 18th November 2017, following reports of a coup in Zimbabwe. Reports showed that Zimbabwean strongman Robert Mugabe had been overthrown by the military. They took this radical decision not because Mugabe had done anything wrong, but because his wife Grace Mugabe and her relatives had rubbed the army generals the wrong way. This is so because Mugabe's wife believed that she could succeed her husband. In fact, a thorough analysis revealed that in many countries, first ladies always try to influence their husband's successions. Some have been lucky and succeeded with their missions, while many others have not. In Argentina, Cristina Fernandez succeeded her husband Néstor Kirchner in a rare handover after a constitutional clause banning her husband from contesting was invoked and the population found a better replacement in his wife. We can also remember Marie Antoinette, the Queen, who caused the French Revolution in 1787. In the 80s, Philippines' Ferdinand Marcos influenced almost every decision in her husband's government. Imelda Marcos, a former singer turned first lady, had become the de facto president of Philippines. Why and how women ruin their husbands' governments? I'm telling you, this book, we are reading it to remember Africa's strong man, Robert Mugabe, of which Tamale Mirundi wrote about after he was toppled by the army, or he was overthrown by the army. In this book, Tamale is showing how first ladies lead to the fall of the governments of their husbands. Why and how women ruin their husbands' governments? Whether in a high-profile group or a peasant society, a woman always thinks about her future and the demise of her husband. This is so because women live longer than men do. This is the reason why in many societies, widows outnumber widowers. This trend also applies to first ladies, especially in Africa, where change of governments are characterized by violence. This fear of violence and a bleak future, while out of power, triggers constant fears within first ladies and makes them lose a possibility of power in hands of the opposition. Secondly, in many cases, women are blamed for actions of their husbands. This explains why the military in Zimbabwe targeted Grace Mugabe and her relatives. However, first ladies and their relatives tend to overlook the following factors. 1. Unlike a family affair where the deceased is succeeded by a relative, politics is different. In politics, the future is not guaranteed. The best solution is to create allies while in power, because politics is unpredictable. Preoccupation in succession battles is a recipe for disaster. Once the members of the first family are preoccupied in succession battles, they become isolated and easy targets for those seeking for change. 3. Fearing reprisals from newcomers. This means that in order to protect their selfish interests, members of the first family undermine potential rivals, whether real or imaginary, thereby creating an array of enemies. 4. Since democratic governance is based on name, image, and money, members of the first family, especially in small economies, step on the toes of peasants. They grab lucrative deals, jostling for big government jobs, and evolving into corruption scandals. When this happens, it creates antagonism between the first family and masses, which in turn triggers clamor for change of government. 5. In practical terms, the newcomers target former leaders on issues like corruption and human rights violation for publicity purposes. In Malawi, at the advent of multi-party system in 1994, Dr. Hastings Kamuzu Banda had to compete for presidency alongside other candidates, contrary to what had been happening before when the government was run under a single-party arrangement. Dr. Kamuzu Banda, also known as Mwanzi, which means the lion, had dominated the politics of Malawi for decades. He had managed to eliminate opposition politicians using brutal methods. The West, however, took a soft position towards Banda just because of his relationship with the apartheid South Africa. His opponents included Otoni Chirwa, who was in detention together with his wife, and Chakufwa Chihana, could not pose a serious threat to his regime apart from issuing statements. Dr. Kamuzu Banda, a short man, had directed that nobody should appear taller than him. The trick behind this directive was that anyone taller than himself who wanted to shake hands with him would have to stand at a distance and bend over in order to allow Kamuzu to appear taller. Kamuzu controlled half of the Malawian economy and did not sire official children. This word seemed like bear, but though written sire, then it might be reading and did not bear official children. When time came for elections under a multi-party arrangement, Mama Kazamira frustrated all efforts to retire Kamuzu, who was insane. He could not even remember his ministers' names. Kamuzu had the practice of sending his ministers on leave annually and make a nationwide tour before assessing performance of each of them. Those he would find to have performed would be reinstated. However, under a multi-party arrangement, voters voted along religious lines, and the Mwanzi was defeated by a little-known Bakiri Morozi. Kamuzu was spared for one reason. Bakiri was from a minority Muslim community and therefore did not pursue revenge. However, Banda's wife, Mama Kazamira, and Kamuzu's party leaders were subjected to corruption charges and humiliated in courts of law. In Nigeria, the battle for the third term for Olusegun Obasanjo was raging. His vice president, Abubakar Atiku's wife, wrote a damaging book, The Obasanjo I Know, which unmasked the highly respected Obasanjo. The woman claimed that Obasanjo was a sex pest who slept with his soldiers' wives. This was vehemently denied by Obasanjo's handlers and supporters. She also claimed that his former husband was a wife beater who even never spared her during pregnancy. This book is how leaders lose political power and a woman's biblical curse. Tamale Mirondo writes after the fall of Robert Gabriel Mugabe, we read this to remember the strong man of Africa, Robert Mugabe, former president of Zimbabwe, and now the late. In this book, he's trying to show you how first ladies influence their husbands' decisions and how this leads to the fall of their husbands' governments. I continue. In Kenya, President Mwai Kibaki was forced by his powerful wife, Lucy Kibaki, to publish a list of his children after a female activist claimed he was Kibaki's second wife. She was Kibaki's second wife. The intention was to prove to every Kenyan that Kibaki had only one wife. During a function at State House, former Vice President Mode Aori rubbed Lucy the wrong way, and he was going to pay for it. In a slip of a tongue, Mode referred to Lucy as a second lady. Lucy immediately stood, grabbed the microphone from Mode, and demanded that he tells everybody who the first lady was. President Arap Moi had to separate with his wife after she declined to squeeze dance with President Kenyatta. Kenyatta wanted to send a clear message that Moi was an apparent heir. What first ladies fear? Subheading. I pointed out that the failure to insulate themselves from future reprisals, members of the first family engage in isolationism. This is also caused by failure to create allies for future protection. Their common strategy is to always impose on the population a puppet who can protect their interests. Politics is like raping a woman. What a rapist wants is what a woman fights to protect. It is therefore It therefore follows that the first families try to impose a puppet on their own population. Their enemies also ensure that they fail. This is why Mama Ngina, Kenya's former first lady, stands out. Mama Ngina was a Chikuyu and were aware that the Kikuyu wanted another tribesmate to succeed his husband, Jomo Kenyatta. This also explains why all Kenyatta's vice presidents like John Mulumbi, Oginga Odinga, and Arap Moi were humiliated by the Chikuyu mafia. The Chikuyu mafia under Mbiyu Koinange humiliated Moi on a number of occasions. While he was still vice president of Kenya, Moi was slapped in the face by a traffic police officer for refusing to stop at a police-mounted roadblock. When he later took power, the man who slapped him fled to Tanzania, but Moi pardoned him. Mama Ngina ensured that Moi succeeded her husband at the charging of the Chikuyu mafia. Mbiyu Koinange was a deadly fellow who wanted to succeed Kenyatta at all costs. He is alleged to have masterminded the assassinations of Tom Mboya, Gama Pinto, and JJ Kariuki to pave way for his presidency. His plan was, however, frustrated by a powerful Attorney General, Charles Njonjo, who refused to amend the constitution in Koinange's favor. The Mama Ngina wisdom has eluded many first ladies in Africa. The reason is that, unlike Kenyatta, who created a Moi, the husbands to many first ladies in Africa have not identified a Moi. Once posed a question, why the fear? Unlike Mama Ngina, who has lived a respectable life ever since her husband's death in 1978, other first ladies have lived difficult and challenging lives. First ladies that have suffered while out of power. Subheading. In Ethiopia, when former Prime Minister Meles Zenawi died, the widow expected to be treated with high respect. To her surprise, she was bundled out of the Prime Minister's residence. During her husband's government in Mozambique, the then First Lady, Grace Machel, who later got married to Nelson Mandela, was the Minister for Education. The position, was the Minister of Education. The position she later lost. She later lost this when her husband Samora Michael died in a plane crash, in an incident suspected to have been staged by the apartheid government in South Africa over his Nkomati Accord. Both John Garang and his wife Rebecca Garang were SPLA generals in Juba. However, life immediately changed soon after her husband's death. She joined Machar faction together with her son to fight a fellow Dinka, Salva Kiir. In Tanzania, in spite of his contribution to the country and the Catholic Church, Julius Nyerere's widow and her family are being looked after by President Yoweri Museveni. After causing trouble in Kigali, Rwanda, which led to her husband's death, Agatha fled and sought exile in Kenya and did not go to France, as many expected. In Kampala, Uganda, Obote's widow, Miria Karole Obote, is surviving on goodwill from President Museveni. Madina Amin, the widow, to Uganda's dictator, Idi Amin, fled to Mobutu's Congo, but returned to Uganda and lived on handouts from government. China's founding father, Mao Zedong's widow, Jiang Qin, ended up bundled with the members of a gang of 4, charged with treasonous crimes and sentenced to death. She was later given a life sentence, which she cut short by committing suicide. All the cases highlighted above is part of the history that haunts first ladies in many countries, wondering what type of life they will face after their husbands have lost power. Finally, we should also examine the fact that once the first family expands, the president's power is threatened. He becomes vulnerable and uncomfortably holding on to power. I partly addressed this when I said that in small economies, politics and power is like sharing a rabbit. You actually fail to understand who ate what. Therefore, once the first family expands, close interactions with ordinary people becomes easy. For example, Saddam Hussein was a staunch pan-Arabist until his daughter got married to his close relatives, which is a normal practice in the Arab world. The bigger family acquired power and started committing atrocities with impunity. William Tolbert, who was killed by Sergeant Samuel Doe, started off as a good man. However, as the family expanded, he started filling government posts with relatives, which made him more vulnerable. Hosni Mubarak's troubles also originate mainly from trying to groom his son, Gamal Mubarak, to take over from him. He had become the secretary of the ruling party. The same applies to Senegal's Ibrahim Wade, who was also grooming his son for a possible takeover. These efforts, however, are resisted, and these are the reasons why. In a monarch, a person to take over power from the reigning leader must belong to the royal family. This dictates the leadership. This dictates that leadership is restricted to royals. In democracies, however, everyone is free to contest and possibly win. Secondly, the eventual takeover from the incumbent to another member of the first family depends on performance of individuals. For example, George Walker Bush took office from his father's successor, Bill Clinton, but his father's legacy cannot be majorly counted out as a determinant factor in Bush's success. South Korean Park Chung-hoo took over from his father, the country's founding father. Uhuru Kenyatta, the Bhuttos in Pakistan, and the Gandhis of India are also an example of an inherited legacy, but power transfer through first families largely depends on the capacity and individual performance. Sadly, in Africa, it is imposed on citizens as a way to protect family interests, even when majority are yearning for change. We read this book to remember Africa's strong man, Robert Gabriel Mugabe, and this book was written by our usual author, Joseph Tamale Mirundi, authored on Tuesday, 16th November in 2017. We are reading it in 2019 to remember Robert Gabriel Mugabe. Tune in to our original channels, Tamale Mirundi Official on YouTube, Joseph Tamale Mirundi on Facebook, as well as other. If you want this book, it's available in store, or you can drop your message down on this video such that we make a delivery for you. If you would like to read how first ladies have led to the downfall of their husbands, this is the book. This is the book cover, How Leaders Lose Political Power, and it was written by Joseph Tamale Mirundi. Tuning in, thank you for subscribing. Continue sharing and supporting us. Your comment is very valuable to keep us going. We can change anything you want us to change, so long as you have put it in the comments down below. Click that like, click that subscription, and put a comment. Right about now, I'm out. See you next time.